Hi, and welcome to my video on how to choose the right weapon for your characters in Romancing Saga Re universe. Let me start by saying that if you're confused on this point, you're not alone. Many new players, myself included, have questions about which weapons and which weapon affixes to use for which characters. This is because the game doesn't really do a great job of explaining the relationship between weapon types, weapon affixes, and character skills. But once you know what to look for, it's pretty simple, so let's dive into it. To start with, let's go with Barthelemy here. This is a character a lot of new players ask about. The reason being, if you look at the top, we see that he wields the small sword weapon type, or S sword, and he has this fire symbol in the top right corner. Now, as a new player, you might wonder, does that mean he should use a regular S sword? Or an S sword with fire? Or perhaps a fire element staff? It gets more confusing when you look at his skill set, seeing as how these skills all have a fire symbol in the top right corner. And if you look at the two attacks, Heat Wind and Abaddon Hands, they both say they do heat damage. So what's the answer? Well, the answer is you want to use a small sword with fire element on it. So if I go to his equipment, you'll see that this is what he's currently has equipped. Now, why is that? The first thing I want to point out about weapons like this is that when they roll with this affix of an elemental type, it adds spell power onto the weapon. See, as you can see here, it has a spell power of 27 of an element of fire. If I look at another sword that doesn't have an elemental affix, you see there's no spell power. And we want that spell power on Barthelemy, and specifically we want it to be fire type. And the reason is, if we come back to his abilities here, his attacks not only do heat damage, but if you look in the top right corner again, they have this heat symbol. Now this symbol is the most important thing to look for. This is what makes it simple. When you see an elemental symbol in the top right corner of an ability, that tells you what type of weapon stat the ability scales off of. So because this is a flame symbol, that means it scales off of spell power of the heat variety. So now let's look at another example. Polka. Polka is another example just like Barthelemy, only he uses the regular sword type. A lot of new players, if they pull Polka, they may think, especially because of his earlier styles, that he wants a regular sword with no spell power on it, but that's not the case. There's a reason why his SS sword has 30 fire spell power. And that's because his abilities, like Barthelemy's, scale off of the fire spell power stat. This is true for all three of his abilities. Now let's look at a different example. Let me find, here we go, Aisha. Aisha's an interesting one. If you look at her, she has a mountain symbol in the top right, and her abilities, 2 of them have a flame symbol indicating that they do heat damage, in her case, in addition to slash. However, remember what I said, you want to look at the top right corner of the abilities themselves, and each of her abilities has an axe symbol in the top right corner. That means they do not scale off of spell power on her weapon. That means for her, even though you might think, well, maybe she wants a flame axe or even an earth axe, that wouldn't actually benefit her as much as an axe with, say, plus strength on it. Because these attacks scale off of her weapon power, you want an affix on the weapon that simply boosts her raw damage, which in this case would be strength. Now let's look at one final example. Let's look at George here. George has got a mixture of elements going on here. He's got light in the top right corner. He's got sun on his heel here. And he's got fire on his AoE attack here. Now, as we can see with the AoE attack, even though I haven't unlocked it yet, it has a sword symbol. So this would not scale off of spell power, so we definitely don't want a fire sword on George. However, his heal does scale off of spell power for the sun variety. That means if you want his heal to be stronger, you really want to equip a sword with the sun affix on it. So sun spell power on it. That's going to increase the amount he can heal. So I hope that helps clear things up. If you do pull a character like Polka or Barthelemy, and you're wondering, you know, where can I find a typical melee weapon like a sword that actually has an element on it? Let me go to Barthelemy here. So where can I find an S-sword with fire element on it? These don't actually start dropping until Chapter 7 of Very Hard. That's the first place where you will find S-rank weapons that have an element affix that can roll on them. Note that it's random, and if you're looking for a specific element, you may get unlucky, and it may take you a lot of grinding to get a sword drop with the element on it that you're looking for. But that's basically all there is to it. So again, just to recap, look at the skills and the icon in the top right corner to determine what the skill scales off of. And if it has an element icon in the top right corner, you want spell power on the weapon. And lastly, if you're looking for melee weapons with elemental affixes, they start dropping in Very Hard Chapter 7 or later. So I hope this helps. I know this is a common question with players, so I wanted to put this video up. And thanks for watching. See you in the next one.